It was a bright morning in New Delhi when the nation's eyes turned to a large conference hall. Hundreds of people filled the room. Cameras clicked, lights flashed, and the sound of whispers moved through the air. It was a technology and innovation summit where leaders, scientists, and entrepreneurs had gathered. Everyone knew that the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, would speak that day, but no one expected what he was about to do. As he stepped on the stage, the crowd stood to welcome him. His speech began, like many others, talking about progress, challenges, and the vision for the future. But then, his voice softened, and his eyes searched the audience. His words slowed, and he spoke with unusual emotion. "There is someone in this room today who has shown me that kindness and vision can change not only a company, but also lives," he said. "Today, I want to thank Sundar Pichai." The audience turned to see Sundar, sitting quietly in the third row. His face was calm, but his eyes showed surprise. No one had expected the Prime Minister to call him out like that. Sundar stood, smiled, and bowed slightly in respect. The cameras zoomed in on his face. The entire hall wanted to know what had happened between these two men that led to this public gratitude. The truth was that their story had begun years ago, far away from the bright lights of conferences. It was not a political agreement or a big corporate deal that had connected them. It was something far more personal, something that had tested humility, resilience, and trust. Years before this day, Modi had been traveling overseas for a government visit. In between official meetings, he had taken a short detour to meet with Indian engineers working in global tech companies. One such meeting was with Sundar, who at the time was leading one of the world's most influential technology teams. They had spoken for only 15 minutes, but in that short time, Sundar noticed something unusual. Modi had seemed distracted, glancing often at his phone, his voice slightly tense. After the meeting, most people would have simply moved on, but Sundar did not. He quietly asked one of the aides if everything was all right. The aide hesitated, then explained in a low voice that Modi's mother was ill back in India, and he was worried because he could not be there in person. That night, while others were busy celebrating business deals, Sundar arranged a secure video connection for Modi to speak to his mother from thousands of miles away. It was not part of his job, and it was not a publicity move. He simply saw a man who needed to see his mother's face, and he made it happen. The next morning, Modi's entire mood had changed. His speech was brighter, his energy stronger, and his mind clear. He never forgot that small act of kindness. But the story did not end there. What followed over the next months was a quiet friendship built on mutual respect. They rarely met in public, but they exchanged messages during important moments, festivals, personal milestones, and sometimes, in times of silent struggle. Sundar never asked for anything in return. And then, a year later, came the moment that tested everything. One night, near midnight, Modi received an urgent message from a young team in India who had created a new educational technology for rural children. They were losing funding, and without help, their work would disappear. Modi wanted to support them, but government processes would take too long. He thought of Sundar. What happened next was the beginning of the story that would one day lead to that public thank you and act that no one in the room that day fully understood, but everyone wanted to hear. It was close to midnight when Sundar's phone lit up with a message. He had just finished a long day filled with meetings and emails, and the quiet of his home was something he valued. Yet, the name on the screen made him sit up, straighten around. Modi. The message was short, urgent. "Can we talk?" Sundar did not wait. He called immediately. On the other end, Modi's voice was calm but heavy. He explained the situation about the young team in India. They were a group of passionate students and volunteers who had built a simple but powerful learning platform for children in rural areas. The platform worked even without internet, using local servers to bring lessons to remote villages. Their project had reached thousands of children in its first year, But now, due to an unexpected cut in funding, it was about to shut down. Modi said I can help them through official channels, but it will take months. By then, the damage will be done. The children will lose access, the volunteers will scatter, and the dream will fade. I thought of you because you understand technology, but more than that, you understand people. Sundar listened quietly. Most people would see this as a small, local issue compared to the massive projects he worked on daily. But Sundar saw something different. He saw an idea that could change the future of children who would otherwise never hold a computer in their hands. He asked for details and promised to look into it. After the call ended, he stayed awake, thinking. It was not just about providing money. Money could help for a short time, but what these young innovators needed was a way to stand on their own, to build something strong enough to survive without depending on unstable funding. The next morning, Sundar called his closest advisors. He shared the story and asked, if we had to create a plan that makes this project sustainable, how would we do it? At first, they were surprised this was not a corporate partnership or a big global investment. But when they saw some determination, they agreed to help. In just a few days, Sundar arranged for his team to meet the young innovators in India through video calls. They discussed the technology, the challenges, and the dreams. The students were shocked to find themselves speaking directly to Sundar Pichai. One of them, a girl named Ananya, said in a trembling voice, "Sir, we thought we were invisible. No one listens to people like us." Sundar smiled and said, "I hear you, and I think the world should hear you too." But as they began working on a rescue plan, a sudden challenge appeared. A large private company in India, which had ignored the project before, suddenly showed interest. They offered the young team money in exchange for full ownership of their platform. The amount was tempting. It would solve their financial crisis instantly. However, there was a catch. If they agreed, the company would convert the platform into a paid service, making it impossible for poor children to use it for free. The young team was torn between survival and staying true to their mission. They turned to Sundar for guidance, and in that moment, he faced a decision that would test not only his skills, but his values. What Sundar did next would change the course of their project forever, and it would be the reason Modi would one day thank him in front of the whole world. The meeting to discuss the company's offer was tense. On one side were the young innovators, tired and worried. On the other side, the private company representatives sat with confident smiles, presenting glossy slides and big promises. They spoke about growth and efficiency, but Sundar could read between the lines. The deal was designed to take control away from the creators and turn the platform into a profit machine. Ananya spoke first. If we refuse, we may have to shut everything down. But if we accept, thousands of children will lose access. What is the right choice? Her voice cracked with emotion. The room was silent for a moment. Sundar leaned forward. "I understand the fear," he said, "but let me tell you something. I grew up in a family that valued education above everything. I know what it feels like to learn from very little. If you give this platform away, you will be giving away the dream you built. It will no longer belong to the children, it will belong to the market." One of the young men in the team, Rahul, looked at him and asked, "But what if we can't survive? We don't have money to pay our own bills. Maybe this is the only way." Sundar took a deep breath. "There is another way. It may be harder, but it will keep your vision alive. Let me help you find it." The private company's representatives interrupted, trying to pressure the team. "If you walk away from this offer, we will take our proposal elsewhere. We have the resources to dominate this market." Their tone was sharp, almost threatening. Sundar didn't flinch. He simply looked at the young innovators and said, "Sometimes walking away from money is the only way to protect something priceless." The team decided to reject the offer. It was not an easy choice, and some feared They had just signed their own failure. But Sundar immediately put his plan into motion. He connected the team with a network of educators, non-profit groups, and technology partners who could contribute resources without taking ownership. It was a fragile start. They had just enough funding to keep going for 3 more months. The team worked day and night, improving the platform, adding more local languages, and reaching even more villages. But as their work began to show promise, they faced an unexpected setback. The private company they had rejected started launching a rival product, one that looked strikingly similar to their platform. They began advertising heavily, and in some areas, their version was replacing the original. The young team was crushed. "We can't fight them," Ananya said in frustration. "They have more money, more power, more everything," Sundar replied. "They may have more money, but you have something they don't trust. The people who use your platform know it is made for them, not for profit. Hold on to that." But the pressure was growing, and the rival company was not stopping. What happened next would be the moment that truly tested their strength. It would be the beginning of the turning point that brought this story to the world stage. Weeks passed, and the battle between the young team's platform and the rival company grew sharper. The private company's ads flooded television and social media, promising better technology and faster learning. In some villages, they even distributed free trial devices, knowing it would pull people away from the original platform. One morning, Ananya received a message from a teacher in a small rural school. The teacher's voice note was shaky. "We tried to use your platform today, but many parents are switching to the other one. They say it has more features. I told them your platform is free, but they still think the other one looks more modern." That day, the team sat in their small office, the air heavy with silence. One of the members, a boy named Imran, slammed his notebook shut. "We are losing. Everything we built is slipping away. Maybe we made a mistake rejecting that deal." Ananya's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed quiet. Sundar, who had joined the meeting over a video call, listened carefully. His expression was calm, but his voice carried weight. "You are not losing because your idea is weak. You are losing because they are trying to make people forget why you started this. When that happens, you have to remind them." The words were powerful, but the reality was brutal. They had less than a month of funding left. Even Sundar's contacts were running out of options to keep them afloat. The team worked late into the night, but for the first time, doubt began to settle in deeply. And then, when hope felt thin, something unexpected happened. Ananya received an email from a school in Gujarat. The principal wrote, "We have been using your platform for months, and it has changed our children's lives. I don't know if you can visit, but if you do, you will see something that might lift your hearts." The team decided to go. The school was small, its walls painted in bright colors that were beginning to fade. When they entered, dozens of children ran up to them, smiling, holding handmade thank you cards. They spoke in different dialects, but their message was the same. They loved learning with the platform. One boy, about 9 years old, walked up to Ananya and handed her a small notebook. Inside, he had written his dream. "I want to become an engineer so I can make things like this for my village." That moment broke the tension in everyone's hearts. They remembered why they had started this journey, and just when they thought this was only a small morale boost, the principal told them something else. "One of our visitors last week was so impressed by what the children are learning here that he took a video and shared it with someone important." Ananya asked, "Who?" The principal smiled. "I believe you will find out soon." What they didn't know was that the person who saw that video would turn the entire story upside down and lead to a turning point no one expected. 3 days after returning from Gujarat, the team's small office phone rang. Ananya picked up, expecting it to be another local school inquiry. Instead, a calm but authoritative voice greeted her. "This is the Prime Minister's office. We have reviewed some material about your project. The Prime Minister himself would like to speak with you." Ananya froze. The rest of the team looked at her, confused. She put the phone on speaker. The voice continued. He has seen a video from a school in Gujarat showing children using your platform. He was deeply moved and wants to understand more. The team exchanged stunned glances. Sundar, who happened to be on a video call with them at the same time, leaned forward. Tell them we will meet. 2 days later, the team was invited to a secure government facility in New Delhi. They carried their laptops, prototypes, and nervous smiles. When they entered the meeting room, Narendra Modi himself stood to greet them. His handshake was firm, his eyes kind. He spoke softly. I have been told about your work. I saw the children's faces in that video. I saw their joy. This is not just technology, this is hope. The team shared their story, their struggles, and the pressure from the rival company. Modi listened without interrupting. When they finished, he looked at Sundar. And you stood by them, without asking for anything in return. I know what you did for them, and I know this is not the first time you have quietly helped. It was then the team realized this connection went deeper than they thought. Sundar had not told them about his past acts of kindness for Modi, or the bond they had built years earlier. Modi smiled slightly, as if remembering, there are some debts in life that are not repaid with money, but with trust. And today, I choose to stand with you. He promised to connect the project with government programs that could provide long-term stability without taking control away from the creators. He also committed to helping protect them from unfair competition. The team left that meeting with a mix of disbelief and relief. Sundar walked beside Ananya and said quietly, this is why we didn't sell. This is why we fought. But the story wasn't over. Modi didn't just help them quietly. He had a plan to make the whole country hear about this project, and about the values behind it. What happened next would bring them all onto a stage in front of the nation, where the words spoken would surprise millions and bring this journey full circle. Weeks later, the Technology and Innovation Summit in New Delhi was buzzing with energy. Leaders from across the country had gathered, along with educators, scientists, and young entrepreneurs. The hall was bright with lights, cameras ready to capture every moment. The young team sat in the audience, their platform now safe and supported. Sundar was seated beside them, his calm presence steadying their nerves. They knew the Prime Minister would speak, but they didn't know exactly what he planned to say. Narendra. Modi walked onto the stage to loud applause. He began by speaking about India's progress in technology and the need to use it for the good of every citizen. Then, without warning, his tone softened. He paused, scanning the crowd. There is a story I want to share, he said. It is about a group of young people who refused to give up, even when they were outnumbered, outspent, and under pressure. They built something that reached children who had never touched a computer before. They protected it when others tried to take it away, and they succeeded because they had someone by their side who believed in them when no one else did. He looked toward the third row. That person is here today. Sundar Pichai. The room turned. Sundar looked surprised, though a small, humble smile appeared on his face. Modi continued, years ago, this man helped me in a personal moment when I needed it most, without expecting anything in return. Today, he has done the same for our country. For that, I thank him. The applause grew loud, but it wasn't just for Sundar. Modi then called the young team to stand. These are the people who show us that progress is not measured only by profit, but by the lives we touch. Their platform will now be part of a national program to bring free education to every child in need. Ananya felt tears in her eyes as the audience rose to its feet. Rahul and Imran looked at each other, still unable to believe they were living this moment. Sundar stood quietly, nodding in gratitude. He didn't take the microphone, because some moments are more powerful in silence. Later that day, as they all stood outside the hall, Modi shook Sundar's hand. Some kindnesses are remembered forever, he said, and with that, the story that began with a small act of compassion had grown into a movement that would touch millions of lives, because sometimes, the most powerful things we do are not for recognition, but for the hope they leave behind. Months passed after the summit, but the applause from that day seemed to echo through every village the platform reached. The government's support, combined with Sundar's quiet guidance, allowed the young team to expand their work to places they had once only dreamed of. In a small village in Bihar, a group of children sat under the shade of a neem tree, learning English words from the platform. In the mountains of Himachal, students used it to explore science experiments they had never seen before. In the deserts of Rajasthan, girls who once had no access to school were now learning mathematics through interactive lessons. The rival company eventually stopped trying to compete. Without the trust of the people, their flashy ads faded into the background. The original platform stood strong because it was built on something no competitor could copy: love for the people it served. One evening, Sundar visited the team's office in person for the first time since the summit. There were more desks now, more volunteers, more energy. Ananya handed him a framed photograph. It showed children from all over India holding up handwritten signs that read, "Thank you." She smiled and said, "We thought you should see the faces behind the work." Sundar looked at the photo for a long time. "This," he said softly, "is why we do what we do." And far away in his residence, Modi received a letter from a teacher in Gujarat. It was short, but powerful. "Prime Minister Sir, because of your support for this platform, one of my students has just received a scholarship to study engineering. He says he will return to his village and teach others, just like he learned." Modi read the letter twice, placed it carefully in his drawer, and smiled. The bond between him and Sundar had started with a single moment, years ago: son's wish to see his mother's face when he was far from home. That small kindness had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. And so, in villages, towns, and cities across India, the quiet story of a late-night video call, a group of young dreamers, and two men who believed in kindness continued to live not in headlines, but in the hearts of millions who would never forget the gift they had received. Because sometimes, the greatest change begins not with power or money, but with a single decision to care.